Yeah.
I know that was
Kids, just the best.
So, do you get funding through the city or?
I design, honestly, right now.
Well, it seems like it takes a long time to apply for anything. You don't hear, you don't see anything
The
here.
process is, application is long, and then reporting is the staff person to reporting. And places, big places like Simpson or Simpson, get, I mean, they do, they have staff people just dedicated to their government funding, you know, and, I mean, granted, they get a lot. But one of the things that we have always tried to do with, just counter to what the government wants is, we try to collect relevant data and stuff that isn't basically to, I just hate that people have to share so much personal information, and ridiculous. And that is some of the stuff the government wants, you know, like how many people in your household, how many people, you know, and we do, yeah, and we do income checks and we collect data about how many customers we serve, and we know all of our customers are below certain because that's what we have to do that. But we don't mandate any form of their age, race, anything. We give people an optional demographic survey to fill out when they make an appointment. Some do, some don't. It's like it just feels like I would have to ask a lot of questions and just I get it. I understand the need to make sure that they're getting target population also others get folks who don't have access or getting it. I get all of that. And I just mostly my philosophy has been the things that I get asked when I bring my car to shop. Because we've always had to do quite a bit of insurance. I'm sure you tell it. You have to do those things for me. You know they bar those license. That's that. But why do we assume that just because people are poor, they don't have those things or should be required to prove it? No. Exactly. Hello, good morning.
Hi, Jane.
I think we're just running a little late with our,
I was gonna guess a little.
it's so nice here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love it. I'm happy to be here. I love Plymouth and just really appreciate the invitation.
Just really anxious to hear all you have to say.
Oh, good. Good.
I'm assuming it's crowded out there and they're going for coffee. They'll be coming in.
It's just you two. You're gonna just get a private,
Well,
very private audience. I was gonna say a private audience with the Pope, but that would make me seem something that I'm not.
well, I'm assuming your place is not open on Sunday.
It is not. No, we are only open Monday through Friday. So
Monday and Friday.
Yep.
So you have both Saturday and Sunday.
yes, we used to be open Tuesday through Saturday, but then it became harder and harder to find people who, even if they had Sunday and Monday off, who wanted to work Saturdays. They just was having a hard time. I get it. I don't want to work Saturday and Sunday. So, before 5 years ago, we moved to a Monday through Friday schedule. In the very early days, we were only open Saturdays and Sundays, and then no customers ever wanted Sundays. I would be like, I cannot hear you on a Sunday next week, and they would be like, or I can get you in on a Saturday, and they'd be like, I'll take the Saturday, but I don't.
Interesting.
No clue why, but so then in the very early days, it was just we were open 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday. So then after literally about 2 months, we moved to 10 hours on Saturday. So it was switched from saying 5 to 8 to 6. leaseholders, and we expanded. There's four bays on the side of that building that were designed as detailing bays. So they didn't have, originally they didn't have lifts in them for cars and stuff, and the other business didn't need lifts, so we had to figure out that. But anyway, we were there until 2018, so it was 5 years. And then we moved to our current location in September of 2018. We lived through the uprisings and COVID. Right there, literally, I mean, the Arby's that was right next door to us, 10 feet away, burned to the ground. So
But you were unscathed.
largely, we have had some damage. We have a mobile van and that got trashed, and our office got broken into. But compared to the rest of the neighborhood, I almost hate to say it, that we had any problems, because comparatively we didn't. So it's that Chinese curse. I hope we live in interesting times.
I thought it was interesting because our commander was here for Tuesday.
Okay.
And he said that one of the biggest uses of the cars that they're using is people like, I don't know, South, I don't know, what areas of town. People will rent a car for a day and do all their monthly, everything.
Absolutely.
Get it all
All
done.
done one day. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
And said, yeah, they make use of that.
they do. I have a guy who used to be on my board, ironically, who even had a driver's license, and he didn't believe in car ownership, but he was on the board of the Lyft. Because he believed in environmental responsibility, and repairing old cars is way better for the environment than producing new cars. So that is sort of his, but he would use our car in that exact same way, once a month.
They've got their place, I mean, they're on the right track.
They are. It is. We've had some conversations with them. It's been a while of, I mean, the folks we serve, they don't have credit cards or that sort of thing, which makes our car and other places, like that, inaccessible to them. And so just trying to brainstorm if there are creative ways to get people charging. Because we see a lot of folks who have cars that maybe don't need a car full time. It's like I need it to get maybe I go to dialysis twice a month, and that's usually the only use it for. Yeah, and so it's like the expense of maintaining a car for something you need, like, but they can't really take the bus, and they don't have a credit card, so Uber doesn't work, so it just gets to be challenging sometimes for folks to have access to things. So just thinking about other ways to do that.
Oh, yeah, well, we've just been visiting this.
I don't.
I guess we should get started.
All right.
So I'm going to do it.
Well, I thought that people who are interested, they're gonna watch on the record.
Right. So, happy Mother's Day, first of all. One thing we all have in common is mothers. We can say that about humanity and all animals for that matter. But welcome to the Sunday Forum today. I'm Rebecca. I'm a member of the Sunday Forum Committee. And I'm mostly saying this for those of you that are at home. We have a light attendance this morning, or watching remotely, wherever you are. And our speaker today is Cathy Heying. She started Lift Garage, or the Lift, and we're going to hear all about that and about her journey to that, which she was a social worker, a pastoral minister, so there's a lot of threads to this story, and I'm so grateful that she's here today. So, Cathy.
Good morning. I am very happy to be here. As Rebecca said, my name is Cathy Heying, and I am a social worker by training, followed by a master's in pastoral ministry, so a bunch of church work in there. And Then I got a degree in auto technology when I was 38. I went to Dunwoody and spent 2 years in a classroom full of 18-year-old boys and me. If I ever write a book, it's mostly going to be about those 2 years in particular, because, you know, do you ever stop and wonder sometimes, like, how did my life get here exactly? And those were days where I was like, what am I doing? I worked at St. Stephen's Catholic Church just down the road, and St. Stephen's Human Services, combination of the two, for about 15 years. I was the director of social justice at St. Stephen's, and then I switched over to human services and did community organizing and public policy around people experiencing homelessness and poverty. So, but it was in the middle of all of that I just kept encountering car repair. Let me back up 1 second. I didn't know anything about cars. I don't have a particular love of cars. Like most of you, I'm guessing your interest in your car is that you just want it to start when you get in it and get you where you want to go and then get you home again. That has largely been. I did not grow up in a household that fixed its own cars. Just none of that was part of my culture or mindset. But when I worked at St. Stephen's, we had something we called door ministry, and so staff would be on call a different day of the week, and those were the calls, or folks would come in, and usually they would ask for the priest, but mostly they were looking for financial support for some reason, and so we just took those calls, and I often encountered folks for whom car repair was what they were looking for. They were looking for, I need $300 to get my brakes fixed. I work second shift out in Chanhassen. There is no bus that runs at 11 o'clock at night when I get off. I live in Minneapolis. If I can't get to work, I'm going to lose that job, and then I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And, and poverty is like a giant Jenga game in that you build, very precariously, put the pieces together to try to build your way out of it. And just one thing, the one wrong block, and the whole thing comes falling down. And I was starting to see that car repair was that thing too often. And so just kept thinking, like, it's unusual that we don't have, really low-cost car repair in the Twin Cities. It seems like something that we should have. At that same time, St. Stephen's, the shelter that St. Stephen's ran was on that campus, and so I spent a lot of time hanging out outside. I ride a motorcycle, and I used to smoke, and those things made me cool to the guys at the shelter. So it was the only time I was sort of cool in my life. But so I spent a lot of time talking to the guys, and many of them would be hanging on to these old cars, and I would say, "What? Tell me about that. Why? You're experiencing homelessness?" And well, for most of them, it was a practical thing. In those days, the shelter beds were given away by lottery, and so if you didn't get a bed in the lottery, then you at least had a somewhat comfortable, somewhat safe, dry place to sleep at night. But one guy, I remember when I asked him that, he said, "It's ridiculous, isn't it, that I'm hanging on to this?" And I said, "Well, say more about that." And he said, "I hang on to it mostly because it is the last physical thing I have from the life I had before this. And I am terrified that if I let go of that, then I will lose touch with who I am and who I was, and I will become just the homeless guy, or this, like it will just shift something in me." And so he's like, "I just hang on tight because I am not what people see, or the stories they tell themselves." And just, so many powerful stories about cars and their roles in our life. And I mean, many of us, I name all of my vehicles, and we have a connection to our vehicle often beyond just getting us where we want to go. But many of those cars needed to be fixed, and so I was regularly, "Cathy, you got a wrench I can borrow? Cathy, can you help me push my car around the corner? It's, dead, and I'm worried the city's going to tow it." And so, anyway, there was like 2 years where it just felt like, every day I was dealing with a broken down car in some capacity. And again, I just kept thinking about why we didn't have something like that. And then soon my thoughts started turning to, well, somebody should do that. Somebody should do something about that. I had still no idea that it might be me. And if I had thought it, I would have, I was like, I've got this great idea that anybody can have for free. I won't even take royalties on it. Here you go. And then it just sort of dawned on me one day that like maybe this was some sort of Holy Spirit calling nudge that, which I was not interested in at all. I mean, I was still paying off my grad school student loans. I knew nothing about cars. I had a lovely life. And I just kept thinking about it. And, many times in my life I would be envious of the Hebrew Testament prophets who would get like burning bushes or like these really clear signs, like you know what to do. I mean, there's no mistaking. Like God has said, here, and so I'd be like, why doesn't that ever happen to me? And then it was sort of happening to me, and I was like, oh, I didn't really mean that. I didn't mean it at all. Ambiguity is really good because you can sort of live in denial. And so one day I thought, well, I'm just going to sit down and sit with this a little bit. And so I'm going to write out a pro and con list about the reasons that I, Cathy Heying, should do this, why I should be the one to try to pursue this, besides the social good. That was sort of a given, like that's the good thing of this, but why did it have to be me? And even though I believe in exaggeration for the sake of a good story, this is not an exaggeration. Literally nothing in the pro column. Everything loads in the con column. Grad school student loans, know nothing about cars, have a job that I love, know nothing about running a nonprofit, and I could not think of one, and I tried really hard. It wasn't like no, can't think of any good reason. I and I still couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's when I was like, shit. So I made a bargain with myself that I had to at least try. And so for me, the first step felt like I need to learn about cars. So I thought, I'll call down to Dunwoody. I needed to still keep working at St. Stephen's, so it's like I needed to be close. That was really my primary reason for Dunwoody as opposed to one of the other tech schools, because it was right here. And I said, can I come for a tour? Yep, come on down. And this was March of 2008. And, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to stretch this whole thing out for years. I'm just going to start investigating and stretch things out. So I get there and get a tour, and Chuck Bowen, the director, says at the end of the tour, well, this is a really popular program, and we will almost certainly be full within the next week or two. So if you want to start at all in the fall, I'm going to need an application by the end of the week. Then the next round of negotiating, well, I can apply. I probably won't even get in, or if I get accepted, I don't have to go. I applied, I got accepted, I went, clearly, and started school that fall, September of 2008, as I said to some of you earlier, with 40 18-year-old boys. And as a middle-aged lesbian, I had no idea what to do with 18-year-old boys when I was 18, and 20 years since did nothing more for that clarity. So I was in over my head so much. I just, it was hard. And I admit now with a lot of humility and a little bit of shame, I went in cocky. I'm like, I have a master's degree. How hard can this be? Kind of, it's, oh my God, it just kicked my butt. Both the culture, the culture was sort of boot campish. They only called us by our last names. The sort of hollering was kind of the acceptable tone of communication. And, just precision, 7:30 on the dot, you hear, and trying to teach soft skills to 18-year-olds. And then the content, my brain is people and feelings and, and it's we're science and math, and I'm like, can we just talk about how the cars are feeling? It was just kind of, and so the content was really hard. I struggled academically, and I almost quit. And all I had told myself was I would try, and so I wanted to give myself permission to quit if I needed to, and so my instructor my first 2 quarters there actually was this guy named Dave Duvall. who just hollered a lot, and I was always getting yelled at for having my safety glasses on the top of my head because I don't have eyes on the top of my head. And he had asked me early on, sort of, what are you doing here? You don't really fit the profile, let's just say. He asked it kindly, but he was curious. And so so I said, I don't know. This is the need I see. I'm not really sure how to address it. And so I'm trying to figure that out. So about halfway through the first quarter, I could not flare brake lines, and I stayed after class, and I couldn't get signed off on this job until I could successfully flare a brake line, and I just started crying, and then I was embarrassed that I was crying because, just all the things, and so he came over and he sat down and he said, what's going on? And I said, I gave this a really genuine shot, and I feel like I need to quit. I just can't. This is not for me. I am not a good tech, and I don't know how I can make this work. And this big, burly, hollering guy says, "You're not quitting. I'm not letting you quit. You're smart. You can do this. You've got a great vision. There's a huge need in the community, and I'm going to help you every step of the way until you walk across that stage in 2 years. Even after you're out of my class, you're having trouble with something, you come back, and I'll help you." And he was true to his word, and he was a member of the board of the LIF for 9 years until his term ended. And so the LIFT has always been community. It has always been a lot of people there. I can name so many people along the way for whom I would have given up if it wasn't for that right person at that right time saying the one right thing. And that's how we show up for each other. We don't always have to be the one doing it, but we do have to take care of each other and be that encouraging word or step in and provide that kind of support to help folks get there. So long story short, I graduated and then kind of now what? And so I, again, still working at St. Stephen's, spent a couple of years having coffee with folks, anybody that I thought might have an insight into what this could look like. As I said, I did public policy often, so I was often at the Capitol, but then I picked up another part-time job at the Sears that used to be right down the street from the Capitol, doing oil changes and tires and batteries and stuff. And so it was a weird time because I would be at the Capitol during the day lobbying a legislator on, HR 2467, and then later that day that legislator would be in getting their oil changed, and they'd be like, "Do I know you?" And I'd be like, "Yes, you should vote on HR 2467. I was just in your office earlier." Yeah, I know, it was a weird time. And so got a board together, eventually decided that sort of a nonprofit model was what I wanted to pursue, mostly because that was the language I spoke. I'd only worked in nonprofits my whole adult life, and I didn't really know how for-profits worked or any of that. So pursuing a nonprofit, got a board together in the fall of 2011. 2012, we got our 501c3 status. Sort of our goal was 2014, we would try to open like one bay, something. Late 2012, I get a call from an acquaintance of mine who said she was needing a subletter in this business. She was sort of semi-car business. They were trying to enhance hybrids, basically, and they had run out of product. The market wasn't sustainable for that business, but she was locked in a lease for another 6 months, and she had heard what I was trying to do, and we should start subletting a bay. This was December, January 1st. We should start subletting a bay. And I just burst out laughing. I was like, no. Not anywhere close to being ready for operations. Thank you for thinking of us. So sorry for your trouble. Good luck. Right after the New Year, she called me back and said, "No, I really think you should think about this." And I said, "I don't need to think about this. The answer is no. There's no possible way I can start subletting a space and doing anything with it anytime soon." And then about a week later, she called a third time, and now I was just pissed. And I was about to say so, and then here's that sign again. It was just, God and I have an interesting relationship, and it involves a lot of cussing. God, I just heard it, clear as a bell. "Dumbass, I am opening a door. Walk through it." I am opening a door. And I was like, but we don't have pens. We don't have, walk through it. So against all logic, I went to my board and I said, this makes no sense whatsoever. And I understand if you say absolutely not, and this is what I think we need to do. I think we need to sign a lease and jump in with both feet and see what happens. And God bless them, they were willing. So we signed a lease to start March 1st, so not quite the January 1st, but we couldn't actually open our doors until mid-April because we got rejected by insurance 13 times before somebody would give us a chance, because, you know, when you tell people you have no money and no insurance history and you want to use volunteers to fix people's brakes, like, insurance companies don't think that you're a good, and that doesn't speak, you know, they're not like, woohoo, you are the one for us. So we got there, though. So April 13th, 2013, so just over 11 years ago, we opened on a Saturday morning. One customer, a woman who was trying to get her kid back and forth to chemo treatments. Her name was Jennifer. She drove a Chevy Impala. It was white. I picture it all perfectly still. From the beginning, we have charged $15 an hour for labor and parts at cost. No shop supplies, no environmental fees, nothing. Everybody who comes to the lift, their income has to be at 150% of federal poverty guideline or below. So this year, that's about $22,000 or $23,000 a year or less for a household of one. It goes up by family size, but it's not much. In the very beginning, we started with just very basic stuff because we had pretty much no equipment, no tools. And in fact, the place we were subletting from, because they were so environmentally focused, the space had skylights, and they didn't want to use more electricity than they needed, so they never installed overhead lights. They had a few floor lamps, and so they would go home at 4 o'clock in the winter. We were only open one day a week. We didn't, we had to get those cars fixed. So it's like we were off in there till 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and we're working with like miners' headlamps. I mean, when I think back to those days, I'm like, oh my God, this was insane. But like most things in life, whether you're a new parent or on a new job or you just do the next best thing in front of you and you figure it out. And luckily, most of the time we get it right, and sometimes we get it spectacularly wrong, and you just figure it out and you go from there. And so it just kept growing. And so for the first 6 months or so, it was all volunteers. I was fixing cars. Dave Duvall was fixing cars. Other folks were fixing cars. My board was, answering the phones and writing estimates and, all the things. I had to lay out a lot of personal guarantees to get parts accounts and stuff. And, like if we failed to note a parts company, $5,000, I was going to be paying that bill. So, I mean, a lot of risk and a lot of just unknown. But instantly, we were busier than we ever imagined. I said that we would, in the beginning, we were only going to take referrals from 3 organizations because we knew we didn't have a lot of capacity. And so we're like, just these 3, they're going to get this referral sheet from us. We're not telling anybody else we even exist. We swear them to secrecy. Like, the only way somebody's going to get this is if, the third Saturday we're open, so basically our third day open. I answer the phone, and the woman on the other end says, I saw a flyer about you at a food shelf in Lakeville. And I was like, we don't have flyers, and we didn't distribute them to food shelves in Lakeville. She's like, well, can I get an appointment? So I hung up the phone. I was like, well, that was short-lived, team. Get ready. So from the beginning, we have not, I would say, I use this word gently, but our biggest failing is we can't even all these years later, remotely keep up with the need in the community. For a long time, I thought it was capacity. We just need more days. We need paid techs. We need bigger space. We need, all the things. And now, 11 years later, we own our own building. We have 5 bays with 5 technicians. We're open 5 days a week. We see about 120 cars a month. And we're still booked out months. And that if I had $1 for every moment I have spent trying to solve that problem, I would with love in my heart, I would not be here. I would be somewhere on a beach if I had that kind of money for trying to solve that issue. It's a problem, and we know it. The things that inspired me to this in the first place, the person who's going to lose their job, we're not helping them, and I know that because they can't get in soon enough. And I also know that we've drawn sort of an artificial line at 150% of federal poverty guideline. That was set by us, not the IRS. And we can't keep up. And we all know that if you're making 200 or even 300% of federal poverty guideline, you can't afford market rate car repair. So it's like if we were talking actual need, total community need, it is mind-boggling to think about what it would require. And so that is a problem that is yet to be figured out. We have expanded from doing just basic repairs. We still only do safety and drivability. So like if your back passenger window is stuck down because the motor is broke, like we'll help you get it up and we'll tape it up, but we're not going to tear apart the door replacing that motor because I got people who can't stop their car. We're going to focus, again, with that limited capacity that we have and the needs that are out there, we're focusing only on, safety and drivability. And we don't do any major work. We don't do any engine rehabs or head gaskets, replacements, any transmission work. Some of that is because of the nature of the cars we see, which on average are 16 years old, with 200, 300,000 miles. Some of it is a capacity thing. We can get 10 brake jobs out the door in the time it would take us to drop a transmission. And so it is really trying to keep things moving forward. The cars are complicated. They're old and they're crappy, and nothing goes easy usually. We have a hard time finding parts sometimes. We recommend that people do not invest in their vehicle about 15% of the time when they bring it to us, and that's usually because of something catastrophic, like the subframe you can put your fist through because it's so rusted, or the transmission is slipping, or the engine has a knock that makes it seem like that rod is going to come flying out at any moment. And in those cases, we won't fix. I'm not going to put brake pads on a car that is not safe to drive, or that I'm not convinced you're going to even get home driving it. And those are hard calls to make because, we try not to. We try to let people have agency over their lives and their cars and their money. And there's also a certain line for me that it's like I can't, in good conscience, take your limited money if I'm not even at all sure this car's going to make it a week. The other side, if the car just has a lot and it's the amount to repair is more than the car's worth, but there's nothing catastrophically wrong, we will give that information to the customer and say, it's going to cost you $1,200 at our cost, which would be about $4,000 somewhere else. The car has a Blue Book value of $800, but nothing catastrophically wrong, just kind of collectively. We'll let the customer decide in those cases because it's easier for folks to come up with $1,200 than it is to come up with the $6,000 or $7,000 bare minimum to get even a remotely decent used car in this day and age. So we try to let folks have agency over their own lives, but the reality is we're also a social service agency in addition to being a business, and so I often joke that we are social workers and resource specialists and grief counselors and financial counselors, and then we fix cars on the side. Because that's often how it goes. It's people are in crisis, and that crisis is often what shows up in our lobby, in our waiting room, and it can be challenging working at the front desk because people are showing up in all sorts of forms, and they want miracles out of their car, and they spend $500 with us, which I totally get is a ton of money, nothing compared to what they would have paid in the market, and then they believe they're getting a brand new car. And it's like, no, you're still driving a 1999 Hyundai Elantra with 282,000 miles on it. It's just can stop now. Nothing else about it is new. So like those kind of engagements can be challenging, and just trying to meet people where they're at. We are big believers in grace and second chances because we all allow that. We all have days where we don't show up the way we wish we might have. So we've had to live into this a little bit about if a customer comes in mad at us, it's like, do they get another chance? It's like, usually, if they start swearing at us or using other threatening language, then that becomes less and less. But finding that gray space to know that people are living, literally, we've had people have, mental health delusion experiences in our lobby. We've had, so it's like we try to understand that people are, in a different space, and to create space and grace for that. And I also don't need my staff or me to be continually abused over and over again. And so finding that line of how much grace is too much has been a challenging thing for me. And sometimes I've gotten it wrong, and I feel like I've erred on the side of the customer more than the side of my staff too much, and I've burned out staff because I'm like, well, we're just going to give them another chance and it's like, yeah, well, what about me? And so it's all learning. It's all learning. None of it is learning I wanted. I was completely happy with my life, but God got involved, and here we are. So when people say I'm going to pray, I'm always like, careful. Praying is a dangerous endeavor. It is, you do not know where it is going to end if you are sincere in your asking for guidance, and you are open. If you are open to the answer because you are sincere in seeking that guidance, then you better strap in. You better hang on, because you don't know where it's going. So the lift thrives in many ways. We're a staff of 15 now. We have a few other programs. We have a mobile program that goes out mostly to try to triage cars more than fix them on the spot, so we can keep those cars that do not invest out of the shop and save shop appointments for cars that are actually fixable. We're working on a program that will, it's in its early stages, but a partnership between us and Exodus Lending and different businesses who have fleets. So the vision is they donate the fleet or sell the fleet cars at a low cost, and Exodus gives a $2,500 personal loan to pay for that. And these are cars that are 5, 6, 7 years old that would be worth $15,000. So it's still in its early stages, but all those folks whose cars we DNI, they say, well, where can I get a different car? Nowhere. There's just nothing out there. We do free pre-purchase inspections for folks who are looking for cars, because we want to try to help people get in decent vehicles. But so we're trying all the ways to think about all the way around the car circle without straying too far from our mission, because we still can't fix cars fast enough for the folks we're seeing. So I want to tell you one more story, because as I told Rebecca, my partner says that I can talk more than 30 minutes in my sleep, and so so I'm just clearing my throat. But I understand you all have you have a time commitment that I want to honor. But many people ask me, so the lift is at Lake and Hiawatha, our current location. We've been there since 2018. As you all probably remember, in 2020, that intersection was the source of a lot of pain and a lot of despair and anger, and all rightfully so. So we're about a block from the 3rd precinct, and when things started heating up, we just mostly stayed there. I just pulled up chairs and sat out front and talked to people and tried to find the right balance again between sort of keeping our building safe, but also understanding and being present to people in their real pain and their real anger. And people would say, can I park in your lot? Yeah, I'm not responsible for anything that happens to your car while it's in my lot, but sure, need a bathroom? Help, use ours. But mostly we sat there and just sort of engaged with folks and tried to keep the building safe. Lots of interesting encounters. These kids with hockey sticks came up to our plate glass windows, and they were like kind of this. And we have a peace sign in that window, and I was just about to get to them, and one of them's, hey, wait, they got a peace sign in that window. We shouldn't do this. And I was like, good boys, go home. I don't know what the hell you're doing here, go home. But so things kind of started on Tuesday night. Wednesday night, they really, really ramped up. Thursday night is when the precinct was lit on fire, and fire started Wednesday night. But at any rate, so finally on Thursday, I'd been there. I'd taken breaks during the day and gone home and slept a little bit, but mostly had been there nonstop. And Thursday night, I was like, I got to get some sleep. So one of my staff and my partner were like, we'll be on shift here for 4 hours or something. And so I left about 11 p.m. and they called me and said, they just started the precinct on fire, but we think it's okay. It mostly seems like it's staying down at that edge of the block, and we'll keep monitoring it. I'm like, okay, keep me posted. And then they said, 20 minutes later, they called and they said, and we were about 10 feet from the Arby's that used to be there at its closest, and they said, they just firebombed the Arby's, and the Arby's is going up quickly. And I was like, okay, it's time to go, get out of there. And no, then they're going to get us next. I understand. We've done everything we can, And mostly I was concerned about, it had been an ordinary work day when all of this went down. Our shop was full of customer cars. And like, I knew that our insurance would ultimately pay for them, but I'm thinking of all these folks who don't have anything, and now it's going to be months before they get any sort of settlement around a vehicle that was, so and I didn't want my building to burn, of course. But I was like, it's time to go. And this was my partner, and she's like, no, we're not leaving. And I was like, put Laura on. That was my staff person. Laura, this is your boss. Go home. That's a direct order, both of you. She's, okay, fine. So they leave. I turn on the TV because it's, everybody's live streaming it, KARE11, and I watch as people are pulling the boards off of the front of our building. I'm watching that at home, just crying. So, I don't know, 12:30 or so by now. I call my mom because no matter how old we get, if we have a good mom, we want to talk to our mom. And so I'm talking to my mom and I'm crying. And while I'm talking to her, my phone rings. Somebody calls in, and it's this guy named Turbo Tim. He has 3 or 4 shops in the area. Acquaintance of mine. I'm like, why the hell is Tim calling me? So I switch over to him. I said, yeah, I'm down at your shop. And I'm like, what are you doing there? You don't even live anywhere near there. Like, well, I rode my bike down here because I just sort of wanted to see it for myself. And me and this other guy that you used to work with at St. Stephen's, we saw these kids breaking into your building. And so, they destroyed a bunch of stuff. They destroyed your van, and they destroyed a bunch of stuff in the lobby, but they didn't get into the shop, and nothing's on fire. We got them out. But I got to go. And so you should get down here because your building's wide open. And I'm like, thank you. I appreciate the love and the care that you did to do that. I'm not coming back. I just pulled all of my people out of there. I'm not risking anybody's life. It's just not worth it. And he's like, but they're gonna get in. I said, I understand. And this is the decision I made. Thank you. Go home. I said, and besides, I'm watching it on TV, and I see how high the Arby's flames are. And I was like, and it was a super windy night. And I said, there's no way Arby's fire, even if no other human touches it, the Arby's fire is going to get us. It's just too close, and it's too big. Go home. So hang up, and I'm crying, and then about 15 minutes later, he calls me again. Hey, I'm still here. I'm like, get out of there. What is wrong with you? He said, I've been watching, and he's like, you're right, it's super windy, and but it's all blowing in the other direction. Those flames aren't coming anywhere near your building. I don't think Arby's is going to get you. He's like, so I'm staying. I put a message out on Facebook and asked for volunteers, and I tagged the lift. And so 2 of your customers and 3 of my friends are on their way. It's been years, and I don't cry. We got this. We got this. You haven't slept in days. Get some sleep. I'll call you in the morning. So I went to sleep for about 4 hours. First time I'd slept that long in days. And I wake up to a text from Tim at 6:30 or something. Sun is shining. Picture of the lift just standing. He said, we're going home. It takes community, my friends. It takes all of us to make the stuff happen. Life is hard. It's so hard, and people need so much. And we don't all have to go back to automotive school. We don't have to do that, but what we do have to do is show up for each other, whether it is in the form of Dave Duvall, who is telling you you can do this, whether it is in the form of, the Holy Spirit saying, damn well better do this, whether it is in the form of Tim Suggs saying, we got this, go to sleep. We just have to show up for each other. We're buying into hope. That's what we're buying into in a world that desperately lacks it. And when we show up for each other, miracles happen. So super grateful for your time. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take some questions if you have any. Do we think about expanding all the time? It's money. It's expensive. Our budget is about $2 million a year, and we have to fundraise to keep our rates at the rate they're at. We have to fundraise about 1.75 million of that. That all mostly comes from individuals and foundations. We don't get any government funding. Shops are expensive. They, equipment alone. My dear father has been dead over 10 years, but I feel like him a lot when I walk into the shop and they're like, oh, we need a new X, and how much is it? $5,000. God, why is everything $5,000? Nothing's $1,000. Why isn't anything $500? Like he just comes out of my mouth like that. So it's expensive. We're looking at replacing a lift this summer. That'll be the quotes we're getting are $40,000 for it. So just the capital alone to expand to another location is overwhelming to figure out how do we raise. That's presuming we would find an expansion that is similar in size to our current. We have been trying on, the aforementioned Tim has been letting us rent 2 bays very cheaply out of one of his locations just to try on. What is it like to be in 2, it's not a full second location, it's basically like if we could add 2 more bays to our current business. So it's like everything still happens at the main shop, customers still come to the main shop. It's only about 10 minutes away, so we shuttle cars and parts over there and just, it's more space. So that's been good learning about what does it look like to stock inventory in 2 places? What does it look like to, but quite frankly, it's, we're kind of plateauing right now. I feel like the landscape on fundraising is shifting dramatically. The Bremer Foundation has been a huge, they gave us our first grant 3 weeks after we were open. They have believed in us from the very beginning. We get about $75,000 a year from them, and I just got an email from them 2 weeks ago saying we have changed up everything. We're not sure if you're going to fit, basically. And so then I called them and I'm like, well, who does fit? The whole process has been ridiculous. As a side note, don't do this if you're a foundation. We don't really know yet. It's like, so you've just sort of raised this giant alarm. So now I'm like, well, we're due up to apply this summer with getting the funding in the fall. Is that still true? Not sure. So it's like, I just passed my new fiscal year budget, which starts July 1. So I might have a $75,000 hole in it just because, Bremer gets to do what they want, but it's like, there are so many things that are unpredictable and foundations are changing drastically. And some of that change is really good and really important because they have not been as accessible to BIPOC folk and other folks who haven't had access. And it is an unreliable thing, which makes me tend more towards individuals because individuals tend to be more faithful when you build a relationship with people and they feel like they're part of the work they're doing, which you all are once you become donors. Sorry, I had to say it. But, that's, it gets hard to, raise more and more and more money to keep one operation going. We're actually talking about raising customer rates for the first time ever. None of that would be enough to bridge the gap, but we're paying, 3 times as much for brake clean as we did 11 years ago, but none of that is being passed on to the customer. So we're trying to figure out ways to balance our budget without doing it on the backs of our customers, while also recognizing a really, really changing landscape. So yes, I desperately want to expand. It is in our strategic plan to do all the pro formas and to figure out the feasibility of what that could look like. It feels a little daunting, to be quite honest. The need is there. I just am not sure how to pay for it. So, yeah.
It's such a wonderful story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bryce.
To hear your trip and the doors opening and but you're reluctant to go through it, but then ultimately you go through it on so many occasions. It's just marvelous.
Thank
So
you.
I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm impressed too. You have, I think you said 15 employees or so.
That's correct.
So they all had jobs.
They do indeed. They
This
do
is
indeed.
really good.
Yes.
That's one other element of it. What do you actually do? I mean, what does the business do? The minor thing, you do brake work?
Yeah, so we do brakes,
What's the
we do
list of the
yep.
things you do?
We do brakes, suspension, exhaust, a lot of engine work, valve cover, gaskets, all of that. We do, ignition, plugs, coils, anything. If you know anything about engines, I say we do everything on the top half of the engine. It's the lower half, like head gasket and below pistons and stuff that we don't get into. We get a little limited in some of the deep diagnostic stuff because of the more and more manufacturers are getting more and more proprietary. So there's scan tools that are required by law to read a certain set of codes across no matter what. You have one scan tool and they can read all cars. That is required by federal law. Most manufacturers still, they have all of those, but many are like, but if you really want the data on the deeper data, you need our scan tool. You need the Toyota scan tool, or you need the, Ford, and those are, 3,000-4,000 a piece. So we start to get some limited depending on the level of diagnosis, but we do our best. We have a great partnership with the Environmental Initiative, who gets a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to try to limit emissions, and most of the cars we see are old and crappy, and people aren't going to spend their limited money, trying to solve an oxygen sensor code because the car's running fine, but it is emitting more than we want. So they will pay for any emissions-related repairs up to $1,500. So catalytic converters, oxygen sensors, EGR valves, 100% they will pay for it. So that's been a great thing because our customers want to do that. They want to do the right thing. And if the car's running fine and you don't have brakes, and you're going to choose that over an oxygen sensor, of course. So.
Well, going back to your place, do most of them come through Dunwoody?
The techs?
Yeah, the techs.
It's a mix. What I often say is we have a hard time finding techs, and when we get them, they don't leave. Yeah, so the auto industry is challenging in that everybody in the place is paid on commission, typically. So the person you're talking to on the phone, the person fixing your car, they're all getting paid on commission, and that commission is based on what you buy. And so usually there's a base pay, and then for there's different models, but basically you get charged 2 hours for a brake job because there's a database that says your 2018 Toyota Corolla, a brake job is 2.2 hours, according to this database. That's what you're going to get charged. If it takes me the tech 4 hours, or if it takes me the tech 1 hour, you're going to get charged 2.2. So there's an expectation, and the pay goes accordingly, that you will book more than 40 hours in a 40-hour work week because you're going to get the job, you're going to do that job in an hour, and then you're going to start on your job, which you're paying 2.2 hours for, but I'm already an hour ahead, and so you're booking more. So you can make a lot of money on a shop that does a high volume, that sells a lot. We are not interested in selling people stuff, so therein lies the problem. We want the opposite. We're like, these are all the things that are wrong. These are the things you really need to do. Please don't do anything else. So we don't work on a commission basis, which can be hard to recruit techs and we can't pay. We can't pay 80 or 100,000. Our techs make a decent wage. I mean, they range from $25 to $35 an hour. It depends on there are some efficiencies built in, but we do so much for free. You get a free inspection, and that takes 45 minutes. There's lots of things that the techs we get counted for, but we don't charge the customer for. So. It can be hard to get techs in because they don't know what a nonprofit garage is. We aren't able to pay quite the same, things like that. What we have found is that the things we do offer, like there isn't a lot of pressure to beat, we want you to work efficiently, but, it's okay if you want to stop and help the person in the bay next to you because they're trying to problem solve. In another shop, you're like, well, no, I can't stop and help you think about that problem because I'm losing book time. So it's much more collaborative and sometimes you literally just need a third arm. Like I've got this here and I need somebody to hold a flashlight. So it's like in other shops, it's like, well, I'm not going to hold a flashlight because I'm losing money. So people love the collaborative nature. They love that We only work Monday through Friday, and I expect that you're going to stop working a half an hour before your shift ends to clean your bay. There's sometimes people have to stay past their hours if we really desperately need to get something done, but mostly there's we want you to have a life outside of this place, and people like giving back to their community. So we've got really good techs. We also have it's not our main mission, but we going along with our grace and our second nature, we've hired a lot of folks. I've hired techs who don't have driver's license because they've had addiction issues or other things in the past and have lost them. And you're never going to get a job in a regular shop without a driver's license because you have to test drive cars. And I'm like, I can test drive the car. I have a whole nother story about a tech named Charlie who lived in our parking lot for years, and it's a marvelous story, but it takes me about 20 minutes to tell, and we don't have that kind of time. But Charlie went from living in his truck in our parking lot to being stably housed with a girlfriend because I gave him a job without a driver's license, and he hadn't worked as a tech in 6 years because he'd been on a drug addiction bender, and I gave him a shot, and he turned out to be, Charlie has since, he died of a heart attack while working for us, so that's a whole nother story, but there's so many good folks out there who just need another chance, and so we try to be that for them.
Wants to make a contribution, what is which I do. What is your contact? What is your email?
My cards are over there. You can find us theliftgarage.org. There's a lovely donate button. There's all sorts of information over there. My card, if you want to talk with me, more information about the lift and our services. There's some free stuff, pens and tire gauge monitors. I mean, it's like the state fair with salvation. Oh, thank you. Yes. So we are also doing, are y'all familiar with Minneapolis Doors Open? The lift is part of Doors Open on Saturday only. We're not there on Sunday, but if you want to see the shop, stop in anytime next Saturday, or anytime, really. I love giving tours. One of my favorite things is people will come in and say, oh, it's a real shop. And I'm like, well, what'd you think we were doing? But it is, I must admit, it is sort of impressive to see. Every now and then I will leave my office and be like, look at this place. It's amazing, especially considering our days with minor headlights and, doing that. So it's been an amazing journey, not one where I would have expected my life to go at all. And, it's been hard. It's been the hardest thing I have done because there's gray areas. I know I'm very close to time, so I'll wind it up here. A lot more gray areas than I expected. We have about 10% or so of the folks who see us live in their cars. And so that sort of changes the dynamics of things if a car that we might recommend not investing in, we are less likely to do that if we know you're living in it, because even if it's the right thing to do, none of us have the stomach to basically evict people, from their car. But it also changes how we think about things. I remember years ago, this at the old location, this couple came and they had said they needed a starter on their van and that they were living in their van. And as we were digging into it a little bit, they mentioned oh, this is the third starter we've put in 4 months, just something. And so it's okay, well, something deeper wrong here. So we do a little digging, and the starter on your car has a little piston thing that when you turn the key, it pops out and it turns something called the flywheel, a big giant gear that creates some mechanical energy to get your car started. Well, we could see through the inspection hole that the flywheel was missing a lot of teeth. And so what was happening is that too many times of the starter hitting place with no teeth and then just spinning, it was prematurely killing those starters because it was just burning them out. So we knew that putting another starter in, it's just without fixing the flywheel, it's just going to be the same fate. To fix the flywheel, you have to drop the transmission. We don't do that. So I said, I can't in good conscience just do this. You're not going to last, another month. And they sat me down. They said, look, we know, and this is our situation. We've been trying to save money. We are so close to having enough money for a down payment and first month's rent so that we can move into a place. We have some leads on some place that we probably can get into within the next 6 weeks or so. We cannot be stranded in a parking lot with a vehicle that doesn't start because it will get towed, and all of that money that we have saved will go for towing and storage, impound fees. We know that the starter isn't going to last. All we are doing is trying to buy time. And that's what I'm asking you to do for us, is buy us some time. We understand we're not going to come back in 3 weeks and, scream at you that, it failed and expect you to put in a free starter. We just need to buy time. And it's like, everything in my instinct is like, no, that's an awful waste of money. And when you're from a position of privilege, like, you can think about things in terms of an awful waste of money. Like, they just needed to buy time. They weren't buying a starter. They were buying a possibility, and they were buying hope. And so we did it. I never heard from them again, so I often think about them. That was many years ago. That I hope it all worked. I hope it all worked. So, other questions? So, yeah.
Have you seen this concept anywhere else in the country?
Yeah, there are a few places. We get that call. We actually have a thing on our website that says "Start Your Own Shop," because I get the call so much. The handful of other places I have seen it, nothing wrong with this. I love me some Jesus, but I have a lot of religious overtones, which make me uncomfortable, to be quite frank. About, we have our people pray with us, and we have, and like, it is a way. It is not the way I would do it. But there are some, and again, different models. I was just talking with a guy in Joplin, Missouri, and they don't charge any labor, but they require their customers to do community service. So if it's a 3-hour labor job on the car, they have to do 3 hours of community service first and bring that in to prove they've done it. And then, so there's lots of ways to do it. There's not a lot of us. I get a lot of calls, and mostly what I find is people want me to come there and do that. That's really what, ultimately, when we get into it, they'll call and say, I want to start this. Can you give me some advice? And then the more they hear how much work it is, they just are like, So we've talked about that too. Like, is there a way that we could generate income for the Lift by developing kind of a consulting arm that is, helping folks create an answer in their neighborhood to the to the scale they need. Not every location needs this kind of operation. You could do lots of different ways of doing it. So it's out there, but it's not super common. So, yeah.
Oh, here.
You mentioned that you work with people at or below 150% of the poverty line.
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine that? Is there a way to determine that?
There is. Great question. The reason we chose that number is because I am not big on people having to spend a lot of time and energy proving that they're poor, which is a way we have gone in this world because we're so worried that somebody is going to get something they don't deserve. I have a super low temper. I'm not volatile at all until somebody asks me, how do I know people deserve it? Then I just lose my shit really quickly because everybody deserves it by dignity of being a human being. That said, I also know we have limited resources, and I want to do our due diligence. And so we chose 150% because the vast majority of people in the state of Minnesota, like 99% or so, who get food support are at that income or below. There are some folks who make 175 or 200% that can get food support, but I mean, okay. So if you have a EBT card, bring me that, and then I know what the state has made you do to get that. I don't need you to fill out a whole ream of paperwork. So we try to keep it as simple as possible, but people can bring a bank statement. They can bring, if you're on disability or Social Security, you get that annual statement telling you how much your monthly thing is going to be. You can bring that any number of ways, but we try to keep it really low barrier because we just keep telling people over and over that we don't trust them when they have to go to all these different places, and everybody's like, but are you really poor? And I just can't imagine what that's doing to people's psyches. So thank you. So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Get your free air pressure guide and pick up information about how to donate. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how many times I cried in that. I wanted to let everyone know that next Sunday at the church is Racial Justice Sunday. We'll have a Reverend Anthony Germain Ross Allam is speaking at both services, and then he's affiliated with an organization called Restorative Actions, which is about reparations, basically. And Melissa Carter and Sarah Moore Noakes will be speaking about the work that they're doing about economic equity and about theology, justice, and economics. So, thanks, everybody.